Welcome to Mom Matters, created by moms for moms. Today we're talking about friendship and what it looks like after children and how it changes across the seasons of motherhood as well. You know, a recent Pew Research study found that about half of U.S. adults say that they have 3 or fewer close friends. And many say making friends feels harder in adulthood than it did earlier in life. Adding children, work, caregiving, and everything else in between, and connection can start to feel complicated, right? So joining us today, we have Shannon McGuire, founder of Supreme Moms, and Toni Hodge, tea mistress and owner of Divine Lotus Tea, to talk about friendship. This is such a good one because regardless if you're a mom or not, right? Developing friendships in adulthood is completely different from the moment you graduate college to when you get married. That's an evolution. Then you got the babies, you know, and then really going into that motherhood is it's just a completely different playground on each of them. So why does friendship often feel harder though after motherhood?
Oh, you know, I think about the changes. There's the physical changes to the body, there's changes to the nervous system, the brain, but the heart and the seasons of where we are the emotional support that we provide our family and our kids. If we start thinking of friendships, then we go, oh my goodness, how much more do I have to carry? And so I feel like there's a host of things, but it comes back, I think, to mostly values. Do I value the same thing, and am I in the same space, and who am I now? What about you, Toni?
Well, I just think there's this whole evolution that takes place as we become who we are as a mother.
Yeah.
Or as an adult. I mean, if we want to spread this out, it's the same. You know, we become these people who have got all these demands, and yet our old brain hasn't evolved that much in 1,000 years. You know, so we've got all these fears.
Talking about the lizard brain? Yes, that is so annoying. Essential, but such a problem.
Yeah, and so we've got these fears, and they may not even be surfacing.
Yeah.
And we go into what we have experienced over the last 6 years. That thing of being shut down, shut away, has given us even more pressure.
Yeah.
And that fear of being out in the world.
Yeah, no, it's true, right? Because of the pandemic, there is a little bit of that. I think all of us still kind of reeling with some caution.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, a little bit of caution, but then still needing that social fulfillment and like, how do I navigate this? We are also in a very challenging time.
Oh my goodness.
Very dividing time. So I think people are more sensitive and cautious, and a guard is up more than ever before, right? So you add that on top of the typical motherhood challenges of having, of trying to navigate that while creating a friendship circle. I mean, it is a hard time to really be navigating this right now. Back to moms though, right? Women. Shannon, you kind of mentioned this a little bit though, but what changes internally for women though, once they become mothers, that affects how they show up in friendships? You kind of talked about it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I think it's the whole idea of, do I have any more of me to give? Right?
So true, because you have these beings that you bring into your life, whether you incubate them in your body or not, but you have these children, you have a spouse, and you have so many close relationships if you add in parents and potential siblings and whatnot. And you start thinking, wow, my life has changed structurally, and where my energy is placed, my emotional energy in particular. So then you shift that to friendships, and what does that look like? If you think about your first relationships that you had, friendships when you were a child, and then start thinking about elementary, and then junior high, if you were like me, those were hard, and then high school, and then college, and then adult life. Yeah. Every friendship has changed because you have changed as a human, and so it's so difficult to categorize your identity for long term and go, this is who I've always been. There's things there, but the seasons that we go through change, and our expectations, our desires,
our needs,
absolutely just shift, and relationships do along with it.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think there's this in-depth thing that goes on within us as we become mothers that makes us feel like we have to pile it all in on those people in our family. Like that's the requirement. And we forget that as mothers, as women, we need time to ourselves. We need sisterhood.
Yes, we do.
Exactly.
Pivotal.
Oh, sisterhood. That's a perfect way to put it.
Conversation
Yes.
with other women. Throughout the years, women have always done that, but it's not happening as much now because of our lifestyles.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot more division, a lot more separation, right? We're all so much busier. Like technology is supposed to make things easier, but it's also right. I know, laughing, laughing, because I mean, sure, some processes are simpler and easier, but just because it's simpler and easier doesn't mean that we don't have more of it now, right?
Yes.
So it's like, because it's easier, then we take more on.
Exactly. It's the
Opposed
piling.
to keeping it simple, right? You'd be like, oh, I'm gonna have more free time. And you're like, no, I can do that, which means I can also do that and that and that and that and that.
Cram it all in.
Yeah, and we're cramming it in addition to everything else we've always done. And then that takes our plate, right? It fills it all up. And then we have no space for a friend or space for a sisterhood.
Yes,
Time for a
exactly.
sisterhood, time for that bonding.
Which is why
Yeah.
tea parties are so much fun.
That's
Parties
right.
are fun.
That's what we have to do, tea parties, Toni. Let's get it done. Okay, what happens when a woman, though, no longer feels fully like herself in a relationship, right? Because your identity's changing, too. And I think part of this difficulty in navigating as well is figuring out, who am I now in this time that I'm in? And what do I need?
Oh, yes.
Right?
You know, I think of one of the first things that I know happens for me and a lot of women I coach, we go quiet. When you don't feel like yourself, you kind of go in and you start editing yourself and reevaluating yourself and going, who am I now? What do I want? And it becomes a performance thing with the people that you may not want in your life or need in your life, but you don't know it quite yet.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is it becomes this sometimes guilt of like, oh, I should be better. I should be able to do this. And then the stories start. But when you don't feel like yourself in a relationship, you usually shrink. You usually pull away. And there are people that get louder and get bigger and more bold. God bless them. But I usually see that it's a retracting. It's like, I'm going to pull back a bit. What do you see?
Well, I was just having a conversation just the other day with a woman, and some of the experiences are some relationships that you've had over the years, you start to realize that maybe those aren't the right relationships anymore. And then
really good
there's an
point.
emptiness that comes in because now you have to make a decision. And then what? Now I have to go find another friend?
Yeah.
Now I'm tired. I'm tired of thinking about that.
But when am I going to do that? And how am I going to do that? And how does that happen? And yeah.
But those things come up, and that's because we are evolving as women and as people, and it is becoming more and more important to choose wisely as well as want to have a good time.
Yes. And who you were when you started that relationship may not be who you are today with that relationship, and they may not be.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
confliction
Yeah,
point creates the space to go, who am I now?
Wait
What do
a
I want?
minute.
Yeah, and as mentioned, there's seasons, right, where all this evolution is happening, this growth is happening, this realization, this reflection of like, okay, who am I? What do I need now? The seasons, though, of motherhood, how do they influence the kind of friendships, though, that we're actually able to offer?
Oh, it's funny when I think about the different seasons of motherhood. I think we talked about this on a past show where, there's the expecting, there's the new mom phase, there's the kids at home, toddler, and just thinking about the progression of human development in that season. But there's also this season that we go through of young selves and sort of pre-mid selves and then midlife self.
Yeah.
And this different experience that we have through these seasons. But when we break them down and mimic the season of life and we go, okay, maybe there's a spring season, I feel like I'm growing and I want to get out and learn. There's summer, things are hot, but it's vigorous, things are growing. And then fall, my favorite, where you're harvesting and reflecting and thinking about the relationships you have. And then the winter, where there's this quiet death even, and not morbid death, but things change where you go, I need to prune this off. This
How
doesn't
about the
serve me.
letting go of?
Letting
The
go.
releasing.
Letting go, release.
Yeah.
But if you consider the seasons that way of relationships and motherhood, then it allows you space to consider where you are. So right now I'm in a lot of the fall stage of my life, midlife, and just thinking through what's serving me and what isn't, harvesting the relationships that have been so fruitful, but then realizing there's a few that probably need to go.
Yeah.
And coming to that conclusion doesn't have to be painful. It it's also freeing. So the seasons that we go through dictate what energy and people we bring into our lives.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And I know that we were kind of talking, I heard you just moments ago saying, you know, stories that you kind of tell yourself. So coming up though, we're going to talk more about that. Quiet stories that moms tell themselves when friendships shift and how to tell the difference between distance and disconnection. That's when we come right back. And welcome back to Mom Matters. We started by talking about how friendship changes after childhood, or excuse me, children, and how identity, energy, and time all shift. It does change after childhood.
Now I'm thinking, I'm like,
but we're talking about children right now. And now that we're looking at the internal side of stories, right? So we talked about how friendships change, but when they change, as moms, we're telling ourselves some stories because connection feels different, right? And we're internalizing some of how we're processing that. I want to talk a lot about that because I think that that's a huge part of too of how we approach and how we show up in friendships, right? So what are some of the quiet stories that moms start telling themselves when friendships change? How do we get in our head, Shannon?
Oh, you know I'm good at that, Melissa. So good at that. You know, I think about it in two lanes, two polarities. It's either the recharge or the drain, but usually when things shift, our default is to go to the drain space. So we start thinking, I'm not good enough, or something's not working out, or it's them, or the self-pity party where it's me, I'm different, they don't understand, I can't, you know, things like that. So I think we create these spaces in our head to justify us not trying, perhaps, or that we've tried so hard and we're just finally at the stage where we need to let go. But we go into these drain spaces typically in that shift. And I also see the positive side where folks start to reclaim that power and they're like, oh my God, it's been there all along.
Yeah.
This jerk, or whatever it is. And they go, oh my gosh, I'm ready to make a change. But the stories start that mental chatter around, I'm not good enough, they're not good enough, they did this, blah, 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 blah. So it's, you know, it's getting out of the head and into the heart. That gives you that decision making. I'm curious though, Toni, what you...
Well, I think it really has to come back to sort of feeling the feeling, allowing the feeling, because it's okay to not feel good about the situation. It's okay to not feel good about motherhood. Some days I got up in the morning and went, oh my gosh, why did I do this? You know, but we get into that point of where we just need to feel the emotion of what it is that we're feeling about either this friend that's feeling like they're draining us, or feeling this friend that we really want to get to know more. And sometimes I think that we have to go back and remember how it was when we were an elementary school.
Childhood.
Totally.
Playground.
One of my longest lasting friends that I've had as an adult, I met her in an airport. And I saw her across the room and I said, oh my goodness, that woman looks like somebody I need to know. And I went right over and sat next to her on the bench and I said, hey, my name is Toni and I want to meet you. Tell me about you. You know, and that's what a kid would do.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't do that often.
Hey, I was going to say, did she think you were creepy at all?
No. You know, she responded really nicely.
Your energy is always so good.
Well, and that's it, is to approach it childlike. In a sense of enjoyment and pleasure and excitement about the other person, and giving them a feeling that they are emitting something that you need, that you want to know. And I think sometimes it is just, we take it too serious.
We do.
Exactly. I was going to say, we get in our heads, right? Like, oh, but they won't like me because of this, or that, or they're going to judge me because of this. And
then we had a whole movie play before we even said hello.
Exactly. we have an entire script written on what's going to happen before you even sit down, right? And it's kind of like that self-awareness too, because like if you watch children, like you said, when they're really young, kindergarten to like maybe 5th grade, it's like, oh my gosh, I love your hair. We're best friends.
You
know, or I have a jean jacket. Oh my gosh.
I'm still like
that. Exactly.
I love your shoes.
I love your shoes. But I mean, that's the good childlike part, right?
Right.
You identify with something, but then once a child hits maybe 5th, 6th grade, they all of a sudden start to become really cautiously aware. And they're like, of judgment, right? Of like preconceived ideas, of like, oh, I'm going to worry about what they think about me.
Yes.
What if I do this? Then they're going to think that, and that's going to be embarrassing. That's going to be embarrassing, right?
And guess what? That's hormones.
Yeah, that's hormones. But as adults, right, I feel that we struggle with that a lot, right? Even though you try to tell yourself, I got through that in junior high. I survived. I got through high school.
You probably still have dreams about it.
Yeah, seriously. But even as an adult, though, you still deal with some of those things. So Toni, thank you for reminding me to be the kid on the bench.
Yes.
Just go up and say, hey man, I brought this for lunch. You want to swap? Like, I like apples. Okay, cool. So, you know, whatever you want to talk about. Okay. We have to shift gears here just a moment. How do comparison or because mentioning like that whole self-awareness, right? So we have the comparison that we're already kind of pre-wired for. And then you add in things like social media.
Oh God.
Right?
Ouch. Give me a minute.
And as I know, but okay, and I have to, there's something very specific I want to point to here too for moms. Social media is such a huge part, I think, of a lot of networking for moms now. You know, you got the mom groups that get together, you got the fitness groups, you got the play dates that are through social. And a lot of moms, we all, you know, a lot of us post to connect with others, to keep up with those in other states, to show them what you're doing, right? But the reality is that social media is the best of real in someone's life, right? Yes. Very rarely does somebody actually go, today was a total train wreck. Yes. What a horrible day, you know, and like just being authentic and real. Yeah, and so then we're looking at these picture perfect moments of some of our friends. Most of them are our friends.
And you're going, I don't have that.
Yeah, and it's like, what's wrong with me? Oh my gosh, why was my day so terrible? And their Zoe's so perfect, and their children are perfect, and they look perfect, and she milks her own cows in the morning.
Damn trad wives.
Yes, exactly, yes. You know,
she baked bread.
She baked bread, milked cows, and she's like a twig, and she looks amazing. Yes. So how does that play into our internal narrative, especially when we're trying to meet?
Oh my goodness. I keep thinking about the childhood thing and who we made friends with. And you know, there's people that want to be friends because of proximity and what you bring. And they see you and you may have something to represent something that they want to be a part of. I think about this with social media. We see these lives and their demo reel or a highlight reel, and it's like, oh my gosh, I want to know that person. What are the intentions? Social media is interesting because it can create this space of truth, hear me out, because people start to gravitate toward a figure, influencer, or whatever for some reason. So now I want to be friends. But it also creates this realness where you're going, I get to see this person here, and if you know them offline, then you go, wait, but I know this person there. And reconciling those differences, the comparison trap, and looking at someone's highlight of their life, you know, when they're made up and they're showing up all great. And who really wants to be real and show that side? And we have some folks that do really well at it, but then sometimes that becomes performing. So I think I'm coming back to when you're on social and comparing and you're starting to see this highlight reel, what's drawing you in to that friendship? And is that person showing up online the same way they do offline? And the intention.
How authentic is it?
How genuine are they? And just the massive way we can connect with so many folks from across the world now. Do you remember pen pals where you had to write the letter?
That was a beautiful
Bringing
thing.
that back, by the way.
I know. Like, that was awesome.
Actually,
and
that's a big thing now.
Yes.
The younger generation are doing that.
I'm so glad to hear that. That makes me so happy.
I just spoke to a woman the other day. She was probably 24 years old. And she said, you know what? I have a pen pal.
That's cool.
And
that
we
so
share
cool.
pictures. We share real
write.
photographs. We send prints, you know, like real ones. I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing.
It is wonderful.
You did bring up Melissa, the social media, using it to get together with a group, where you find the event online, but then you go and you show up in person. Right. That is a different thing. But the sport of scrolling and comparing, check that, because that is not only is it the comparison damaging, but just the time spent and time wasted, and all of a sudden you're on there for an hour and a half, and there's these things that need to be done. You know?
No, it is. The doom scrolling is a total time and energy suck. That is absolutely certain. I want to talk about the seasons of a friendship. How do we know when a friendship, you know, may just be in a different season? It's not expired. It's not on its way out. It's just in a different season versus something that we really should be like a tree in fall and let the leaves drop and go
I was
away.
just thinking that there's a difference between a relationship going dormant.
Yeah.
You still have a connection, you still have a desire, but we're going to put that on pause until our lives settle enough where we can make true, authentic space for one another. Because when you have a real friendship, you want to show up. And then there's folks, you just got to prune them off. You just have to let them go. And sometimes those are hard because there may be unresolved resentment around what you hoped for and what you felt like you should have gotten and whatnot. Or there's a little bit of an excitement to a chainsaw, like, get out of here. You know what I mean? There's those relationships, be real, where we want to just end it. But sometimes we can go dormant in a relationship and come back. You have a friend that you can call no matter what. You may not have spoken in a year, 2 years, 3 years, but you pick back up energy-wise where you left off. Those are the truest, realest types of friendships that I see and feel and experience, because there's no performing in and I need to pretend to be. But dormancy versus like done with it, I think there are super clear ways to look at that.
I want to say something on that too, because you're like the friends that you can pick up a phone and just call, even after a huge gap in time, are like the truest friendships. And I totally agree. That's exactly where I live in my space of friendship, because to me, it's a challenge when you have like friends with expectations. They're like, oh, you must keep up with me on this level of connection and do these things. And if you don't, then you're out. And it's like, okay, well,
who made these rules?
Who
made these rules?
Yeah, exactly. That to me is a draining friendship, right? Where there's this expectation of you have to do these things or be there or do this or do that. And if not, then okay, I guess we're not friends.
Well,
It's like,
yeah.
no, that's
Are
not a
you
friendship.
a true friend where the give and take is similar, or are you somebody's play toy?
Ooh. Exactly.
Have you ever had those friendships? I have.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Punt that.
Yep. Punt that. All right. Next, we're going to be talking about a simple tool. It's called a friendship compass or a relationship compass. It's designed to help you see where you're showing up in friendships and what actually matters to you right now. We're going to be sharing that tool with you right after this. And welcome back to Mom Matters. We've talked about how friendship evolves, the energy it requires, and the stories that we can carry when things shift. Now we're actually turning toward clarity and a tool that helps moms reflect without pressure. So Shannon, what is the relationship compass?
Yes.
And what does it, or how does it help moms?
Yeah, so everything we do for Melissa is to give that me time and that pause for consideration. Oftentimes in relationships, we think about the external person. We think about them and what they bring. The relationship compass pulls you back into you. 4 key questions. So who am I being? Thinking through how I show up when things are good and bad. Where is my energy going? What recharges and drains? Why does it matter? Your values, and why are you connecting with people, and what do you want? And what do I change? Because before we get to decisions, as we talked about with pruning, we need to understand who we're being and bringing it back to what we can control, if you will. And so this tool is designed to give moms a chance to pause and journal out some answers, and as we always say, not to make drastic change right away, but just to give yourself space to see it and consider.
Yeah, consider and reflect and see, like you said, maybe there are some changes that you do need to make, right? There are times when it is you. Right? And not them. Yes. And so, but when you're able to put everything out on the table like that, then it does allow you to see a bit of reality, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so when someone reflects on who they're being in a relationship, what are some things that tends to surface in your experience?
I see, when I coach, it's a very emotional reaction. People go to, am I being a good friend or a bad friend? Am I a good person or a bad person? And we know things are not that finite. But what I like to direct folks to is, when you think about who you're being, think about if you're playing a role. Are you scripting yourself and playing a character role? And we don't always feel good, but are you being that representation of good? Joy, fun, and love. Are you a place that folks can come to and recharge, or do they walk away drained?
Yeah.
That's a hard one to admit to, right?
Yep. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Toni?
I think that's a really good description, Shannon. I think you hit it right on the nail.
Yeah, hit the nail right on the head. Okay, lastly, if someone realizes a relationship needs attention, right, or maybe an adjustment, what's one small step that they can actually take this week when it comes to improving that relationship?
I would say acknowledge. Just sit with that acknowledgement that you know something needs to happen. Say to yourself with acceptance, like, wow, this needs to change. Before jumping to the next person and trying to have a conversation, just sit with it for the week and acknowledge, like, wow, this needs to change, and start to give rise to the feeling, because sometimes that's anger, sometimes it's grief, sometimes it's just hurt, or sometimes it's relief. Just own that. Observe you. Practice joy. Just observe you. Acknowledge it, and then decide where you want to head after.
Yeah, oh, so beautifully said. So
I
beautifully
hope
said.
so.
Yeah, no, it's true. You know, I mean, because I think at the end of the day, we all want a friend that we can open up to and be our true, authentic selves, right? We need an outlet outside of the family. We can't rely on our husbands.
Oh, hell
no.
no.
We're like,
I love you, but not.
Yes, like, you know, we need that sisterhood and that
Exactly.
connection and that safe
Exactly.
space to not only be ourselves, but also maybe even to grow. Because within friendship, you learn new things and you discover new things, right?
Exactly.
And you're also helping other people do the same exact thing, and that's why it's so important that we have that for each other. I will say before we leave, I've done many public talks actually myself on women being nice to each other, right? And being accepting and playing nicely on the playground. And I think that is a big part of navigating motherhood and creating that sisterhood.
Well, and it's not just for us, right? If we want to raise healthy, well-rounded children,
Yes.
who is the example?
Yeah, exactly. So, both of you, thank you so much. And Shannon, where do we find that tool again?
You can go to suprememoms.com or Idaho-today. That's your plug, right?
That is, yes, indeed. Idaho-today right there. Download the tool for yourself. Maybe you have a friend that also, because let's face it, we all have many friend circles, right? That's maybe navigating a challenging time in a different friend circle, and they're just not sure how to approach it. This is a great way to do it, is with that toolkit. So thank you so much for joining us. You know, friendships, they change across seasons, as we talked, especially across seasons of motherhood.